he was like, yo, I came across that clip and I was just like, she can rap like like yo, she different rap. And then he already knew that I could sing and play drums. I had that music background, so he had mentioned, he's like, yo, I see myself in her.
Hey everybody, I'm Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads, and with me I have Jake Payne, our EIC. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. You sent me a song yesterday, "Hazy Shade of Winter," by Simon and Garfunkel. And, I know the Less Than Zero song, but I was thinking today, you sent that because it's starting to actually get kind of gray outside, right? Starting to get hints of winter.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because last week, you and I had the chance to get up for the first time in, over 6 months, and the weather was like 70s. It was beautiful, and now here we are, like here in Philly, it was like in the 30s through the night. I had all my windows closed, which I never do, and yeah, I mean, winter is upon us now.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So I heard that song late in life. I actually was exposed to it in high school through the Bangles on the Less Than Zero soundtrack. They did a cover, and that soundtrack was dope. It was on Def Jam. I think Rick Rubin produced quite a bit of it. He definitely
Going back to
produced
Cali.
LL song, right? Going back to Cali, arguably the last great Rick Rubin LL song. Um,
Mm.
uh, what do you got on that? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, going back to Cali, this might be sacrilege to some, but it might be. I mean, depending on the day you catch me, but I would say 2 out of 3, it's my favorite LL song, and it's certainly one of my favorite music videos of all time, which I believe Rick at least co-directed. I mean, it's just so artful, and you got the 68, 69 Corvette, and it's just LA as hell, but it's very film noir. Like, I love that record with the horns and the bass, and it just always sounds great in a customized car system.
Black and white video, really slickly shot. Less Than Zero was one of those films as a teenager that was disturbing. It was like Empire Strikes Back as a kid, and the ending was really bleak.
Mm.
You don't usually, back then, like especially like '80s films, there was like a kind of a neat resolution, and this one was bleak. So it was kind of like a coming of age. I think that song represents a coming of age for LL too. To me, it was the end of his kind of first era. He
Yeah.
started off with like Radio and the Bad, and was like on top of the world when that soundtrack came out. And as you point out, it was a phenomenal song. But after that, LL kind of had a fall. He dropped his next album, Walk Like a Panther, Walking Like a Panther. Lead single was I'm That Type of Guy. Very, very mixed feelings about it. He's in I think he had like a smoker in the video, and it was a little bit too. I think he went a little too far for people after being so hard on it with those first two albums, and it was kind of that was a signal that LL might be done.
Mm.
Until the Mama Said Knock You Out album came out, and he was resurrected for a second chapter.
Yeah, I mean, LL is like the comeback kid. I don't know. You and I spent some time recently talking about Busta Rhymes, with this Statement album, but LL has multiple comebacks. And yeah, I mean, Rick Rubin and Russell splitting and Rick doing his thing and not really working with LL again, that to me is always like a travesty. Maybe even far greater than not working with Run DMC again, who, kind of steered their own course a little differently. But yeah, and to your point, doesn't the Bengals version of Hazy Shade of Winter open the film? Like when the movie begins, isn't that what's playing? I could be
Wow,
mistaken.
dude, I haven't
It's
seen it
benefited.
since the '80s. So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, but I don't know. Could be, but
Yeah.
it has so much more energy than the original. Like they really
Mm.
put their spin on it. It's really dope.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, so you mentioned Buster. Before we get into that, I just want to let people know that we got a special guest coming up. Lyric Jones is going to be joining us for a little while. She's put out a phenomenal album. We're going to talk to her about that. But Buster, we spent a lot of time talking about Buster Rhymes' album, Extinction Level Event 2, The Wrath of God, last time we connected, and a pretty strong reception to that podcast. You've had 2 weeks to sit with it now. what's your reaction to it like 2 weeks later? One of the things we talked about was the test of time, and standing the test of time. It's only been 2 weeks, but how are you feeling about it 2 weeks later?
Yeah, I mean, I think the album is just as good as we talked about. I mean, you threw the C word. I couldn't, to be clear, classic, and I couldn't argue with that, even if I was a little bit more apprehensive to use that word so quickly. I played the album and then on Friday, and then I played Royce right after it because, as you know, that's one of the big three of the year, those two and Benny. But it still sounds great. I think that I'm noticing, and it's one of my frustrations with just the way culture moves in 2020. Um, I feel like the daily conversation has moved other places. Now, obviously, too, Busta dropped right before an election, and I mean, music conversations seem to go largely out the window for like 10 days. But I really hope to see this week coming Busta continue people to unpack the album, talk about their singles and things like that. And Busta's already started dropping videos, and as we're going to talk about, has done some really important press pieces to coincide with the record.
Yeah, I'm still hearing a lot of chatter, like especially in like my WhatsApp groups and stuff like that. People are still really engaged and excited about the album in a way that, like you said, attention cycles now are a couple of days. So to have people talking about it 10 days, 14 days later is just a feat in and of itself. I have noticed though that, and this comes up in the interview we'll talk about, but we've got a bunch of songs on the playlist, and the songs don't hit me on the playlist in the same way they hit me when I'm listening to the album because
Mhm.
it's sequenced so well. Everything kind of builds into the next transitions, and it has more impact. That's not to say they're not great, kind of standalone, but the impact is heightened for me at least when I listen to the album.
Yeah, I mean, I love that quality. I think the word concept album is often played out. I mean, so many artists feel the need to make every album a quote unquote concept album. I think Busta took it to the highest level. I mean, something we've seen with Kendrick on multiple albums. And, I think Damn had this ability for Kendrick that there's obviously standalone records, they're very successful singles. To Pimp a Butterfly, I'm not so sure if it had that. You know what I mean? Like, King Kunta is a record that I will play on its own, but a lot of other ones from that album don't resonate as well unless you are committed to listening to the whole album. And I think that's true here too. And you certainly don't appreciate the moments because the way this record's sequenced and mixed, the song before each song and the song after it are all relative. It's like building a train.
Yeah. So is that a does that take away from the songs individual, or is it a testament to the power of a great cohesive album?
I think it's B. And I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I sense that you and I are both album guys. Like, we love singles. Playlist is great. There's a lot of albums that come out, and this has been true since the beginning of time, that have one or two joints on them, and we come back and we play those. But this is an album, and that is abundantly clear. However many weeks it's been since it's dropped.
Yeah, I'd say I'm both. I love a great album. Like a great album to me is a body of work and it stands the test of time and like a true piece of art. But if you don't have a great album, I'd much rather you just put out songs. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like I don't want to sit. I don't want to sit and fight through a mediocre album just to hear 4 or 5 good songs.
Yeah, for sure. And after you do that one time, how likely are you to do it again? You're probably not going to, right?
Yeah, no, put them on the playlist and that's a wrap.
Yeah, unless somebody I encounter is like, "Yo, you need to listen again," and that happens. Um, yeah, and that even applies to probably the biggest album that dropped this week, which we'll talk about as we go.
Yeah. Okay, so one of Busta's stops, he's done quite a few interviews, but I think the one that's gotten people talking about him and the album again is he had a sit down with Van Jones last week, his show, The Messy Truth. And it was like an hour and 47 minutes, something like that. It was a really extended interview, shot very professionally. It wasn't a Zoom interview, which made a huge difference, in my opinion.
Hmm.
You got the two of them sitting in wooden chairs that look like thrones, right? Like they look kind of like medieval and like very like imposing, but like
In a library.
king making. Exactly, yeah. So the whole setup was really dope, and Van, really took his time, like exploring like the personal life of Buster, like getting into his youth, his relationship with his parents, how he came of age in the rap game, And there were some really interesting, stories like Public Enemy, and how Chuck D was a mentor and like how much he trained and like actually put together didn't put them together, but really kind of put Leaders of the New School on the map. But he had some. I know you had a reaction to one of
Yeah,
those really quick.
I love that. I mean, so often I think in terms of mentorship, and we might even get to talk about that with our guest, Lyric Jones, but people associate mentorship with collaboration, and there are, legendary artists that have been mentored by other legends that you can't trace through discography. You look at like, Daddy O and AZ or Foxy Brown, you look at Chub Rock with Lady of Rage. Like people don't talk about, they obviously go to Dre. And with Busta, I think people go immediately to Native Tongues without realizing that not only did Chuck D give him his name, Busta Rhymes, after a football star, but Chuck D and Hank Shockley and the Bomb Squad came up with the name Leaders of the New School before they ever had personnel. And to watch Busta spend, it wasn't like a passing talking point. He spends like 15 minutes talking about how there was this, I don't know if it was a whiteboard or a chalkboard with, or, post-it notes of all of these different names that PE and the Bomb Squad had for their offshoots. And it was this song that no one will ever get to hear, where Busta, Dinko, Charlie Blake, they dissed the artists before them to earn the name Leaders of the New School. And Busta even sells Van like, it's not a song we wanted to do. We were basically in tears doing it. But once they got that, they got the name. Whereas they could have been named the Young Black Teenagers, which obviously went to, a
Well, I
group.
mean that was the thing, right? Like so, they were battling with a white group for the
Yeah,
name Leaders of the New School because Chuck D was originally going to give it to this group, and Buster said, "No, that's our name. We want that name." It's okay, cool. Y'all got a battle, and so the song they had to write was for that
man.
was for that battle, and then after they won it, yes, the all white group was named, very controversially at the time, Young Black Teenagers, by Chuck D.
Yeah.
The only way they could get away with that is by having Chuck D being their sponsor,
Yeah, yeah. And that group, you remember DJ Twist from MTV. Like he was always the host of The Grind and all of those different, he was there like mainstay DJ. He came out of that group. But yeah, I mean, that interview made me reconsider, like so often I know that the groups that PE put out, like Son of Berserk and Johnny Juice don't always get, the artists that they put out. They don't always get the recognition, but Busta Rhymes is of that pedigree. And to watch him, it's a great interview because there's just so much hip hop headedness to it.
Yeah.
I
Um,
really, it's probably the best interview I've ever seen with Busta Rhymes.
wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I love the fact that Chuck D used to make them run while they rapped,
Yeah,
like literally run because he wanted them to be in shape, and like you see the animation and energy that Busta had, especially in his younger years. I gotta believe it's by being in shape and like training like that kind of boot camp style.
yeah, for
So
sure.
another thing that he revealed for the first time is that he nearly died a few years ago. He was massively overweight. I think he said he had gotten up to 354 pounds. And Busta is like maybe around 6 feet.
Yeah,
So he gained like 90 pounds, and had developed sleep apnea and polyps in his throat, and got to a point where 90% of his airway was closed. And he'd gone to a doctor, just like to take care of something he thought was minor. His polyps had come back and he was losing his voice. The doctor told him that he couldn't let him go home. He had to go straight to the emergency. And and Buster was pushing back and said, "Look, you go home, you catch a cold, you're dead." It's something he'd never talked about before. But what did you think about that when you heard it?
yeah. I mean, I didn't realize it, and I feel like I was in the party of people that just thought Busta was just out of the spotlight by design. He went 11 years between albums, and in that period of time, I saw Busta perform with Q-Tip at least once, and his live show was intact when I saw him, which was around 2012, 2011. But yeah, I didn't realize it. And, he had severe sleep apnea, which I know was a factor that contributed in the death of Pimp C. I think it may have, there's other artists that have suffered from that. And Bust even says he gets kind of choked up, as he was like, I didn't want to be another Instagram post.
Yeah.
So to watch him, by the grace of God, as well as his son and his bodyguards and his team around him, do all of that, to now lose the weight, be in shape, make this incredible album. It's one of those things that makes you go and listen to the album and appreciate it through that lens as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there are other people battling illnesses right now. Jeremiah has COVID, and apparently it's very serious. I think he's been in the hospital on a ventilator
Yeah.
for quite some time. He's just had it for like 2 or 3 weeks. So, that's tough because I think he's only like 34 years old or something like that. He's in his
Yeah.
30s. So, what are your thoughts on
I
that?
mean, yeah, definitely saw that, and he's made some music I really like, and I'm thinking about that. I Every day I think of Fred the Godson, like, which was not an artist that was immediately in my mind, but like, somebody that you and I had met that passed away from COVID and or complications related to. And yeah, I mean, this stuff is very real. And this past week, I'm on my own health journey, and had a conversation. I was like, I can't keep going to the gym right now if I want to be around my family in a few weeks. Um, and how do you alter that? How do you make these sacrifices? So COVID is, we're seeing record numbers right now, and I think we're about to go into a huge shutdown again. I mean, other countries are leading the way with that. So it's specific to Jeremy. I hope that, he recovers. Definitely in my thoughts. I'm going to keep checking on that story, but all of us need to be just very, very mindful right now.
Yeah, man, I live just down the street from an urgent care, and every day, no matter what time of day I pass it, there is a line of people around the corner. Their cars parked all the way down the street, by
To
my
get
house.
tested.
Like, I gotta assume, it's crazy. Numbers are spiking pretty tremendously. But yeah, thankfully the death rate is not going up. But
Yeah.
gotta remain vigilant for sure.
Yeah. I saw the other day in Philly, I think it was 7 hospital beds were open.
Yeah,
So like where I am, and my particular neighborhood was a hot spot earlier. I'm trying to lay low, in the words of Snoop Dogg, you
yeah.
know.
I know we lost somebody who was important to you in the culture this week. I'm gonna talk about Spin
Yeah,
Bad.
just DJ Spin Bad, not an artist that I knew a lot about. I mean, Queens, New Yorker, but made what I hold as a mix in high regard with DJ JS1, who's a huge supporter of Ambrosia for Heads, and DJ AV, Rock the Casbah, which I didn't realize came out in the mid 90s. I bought a physical copy of that CD in the early 2000s, the official, back when that's how mixtapes were consumed. And it was a groundbreaking project of three very deft turntablists taking 80s pop music and mixing it with style and finesse. I think it's really, I mean, Z Trip and DJ P, there's some other legendary takes on that, but I think that's the A1, which I encourage everyone to listen to. Cause of Death and stuff like that I haven't seen, but Spin Bad he was influenced by DJ Jazzy Jeff, had been a fixture at his playlist retreats that Jeff does with a lot of dope MCs and producers and DJs every year. So yeah, I wouldn't be a hip hop head if we didn't take just a moment to acknowledge Spin Bad and his incredible catalog.
Yeah, yeah. No, man. I remember you had sent it to me, and I remember listening to it back in the day. I hadn't heard it in probably 10, 15 years or something like that, maybe longer. But it was, I remember I'm a huge 80s music fan, and hearing it get that hip hop DJ treatment was pretty incredible. That was something that was not going on. So it was very groundbreaking in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know Spin like and I feel like lately just the DJ gets lost in the sauce sometimes. I mean, somewhere in the 90s when a DJ kind of became a host who pushes buttons, shout out to all the people that cut, scratch, mix. I just read a dope article on Microchop, which is a great blog and site about how those three guys used a broken 4-track recorder to make that mix, because throughout are drops from some 80s movies and commercials and a lot of like pop culture minutia. And just to know that how hard um, technically advanced people went to make art, for so many years and still do, it just, we can't push that under the rug.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It reminds me of that EPMD story about how they recorded "It's My Thing," because Jay Z used that same sample with
Whole damn family. Yeah.
yeah, hold on, film 7 minutes of madness or
Yeah. Some is a funk. Yeah.
7 minutes of funk, yeah. And but they couldn't chop it the same way. They couldn't figure out how to chop it. And I think that EPMD they had like a reel that they had to like tape and like run across the entire room to like
Yeah.
get the sample like clean like that. So else they did it manually. It was something crazy like that. But yeah, man, these dudes like put in work before the technology made it easy.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize Beastie Boys in their book MCA. Also, God bless the dead, did something similar, and I love that. There's just an appreciation for that level of craftsmanship.
Yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of excitement about a versus battle that was coming up. That was, showcasing two of Atlanta's finest, Ti versus Jeezy. And you just dropped this in a doc. I hadn't even seen it, but now it looks like last minute there's a replacement for Ti, Gucci Mane. So what do you think about? Do you know why he was replaced, and what do you think about that replacement?
I haven't seen a statement. Doesn't mean that there isn't one. Here's what I think is going to happen. This is just barroom talk, but there was a lot of back and forth between Ti and Busta Rhymes,
Mm-hmm.
with some actual like ish talking.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Ti had said like you can only use stuff that overlaps in my run. Like you can't go back and do like the scenario remix. And Busta was like that's BS. So it made sense to see Gucci come in and replace Ti. Gucci and Jeezy, first of all, their careers line up, the same era. But, I don't know if it's something we spent a lot of time covering on AFH. I know other places I had worked before, but they have one of the deadliest beefs in hip hop history. Like
do that.
people, Gucci and Jeezy, yeah. I mean, there was, I believe it's one of those battles where people around them had died because of their beef in the mid 2000s. And, you know, um, one of them, I forget who, got hot in that beef. Like just knowing that these two guys who kind of came into the scene collaborated. Now that beef is long been over. They've worked together, but we haven't really seen that in verses. We've seen some like serious rivalries, like Babyface and Teddy Riley that just makes sense based on conversation. But this one, like these guys, this is like Game and 50 Cent, I think, for Southern rap fans to watch them do battle. Yeah, and I'll say this, there's Gucci music I really like, especially recently. I'm much more of a Jeezy fan. I would have to really spend time with Gucci's catalog, but I know I came on here and was like, yo, T.I. is gonna eat Jeezy's lunch. This one, I mean, based on my own personal taste, I think Jeezy might have it, but I know there's folks out there that ride hard for Gucci. What about you?
Now, do you think which one would be more entertaining for you, Gucci and Jeezy, or Gucci and Waka Flocka?
Uh yeah, I mean Waka Flocka is
And hang on a second,
more.
Lyric
Okay.
Jones is
Oh,
here too. So yeah, 1 second. How you doing? I know it's early for you out there in
Yes.
Cali. Yeah, thank you for getting
thank
up
you.
early to join us. Yeah,
No problem. How are you?
doing well, doing well. I'm Reggie. We met
Yeah, we
actually. Yeah,
yeah, we met
last.
in Atlanta, I believe.
That's right, A3C, the show you did with Rod Digger.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
good to see you. And this is Jake. He's our editor in chief.
What's
Hi,
going on,
Jay.
Lyric? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for making the time.
No problem. No problem. Thanks for covering me.
Of course, of course.
Especially right now for this project. I need all the promotion in the pub and all that. So thanks for, you know, taking the step to push me. And you guys have before, so I appreciate it.
Definitely, definitely our pleasure. We were just talking about verses. The
Oh,
Gucci Mane, and so Gucci Mane just stepped in for Ti, and it's going to be Gucci versus Jeezy. But before we get into
yeah.
your out, yeah, you like that?
That's what we want.
You like
Yes.
that? Okay.
All right.
Yes.
why?
That's
You
Why?
know better than we do. Yeah, you have
Why
that
does it?
Atlanta roots.
Why does that
yes.
excite you? Why does that
I'm
excite you?
I'm very happy now. That's gonna be good.
Yeah.
That's gonna be really
So
good.
why does that excite you?
Well, when Gucci and uh, it's Jeezy, right? Yeah. When
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gucci and Jeezy were at their prime, I would say their height. I was living in Atlanta, so I was in college when all their hit records were coming out. So I'm gonna be I would be invested if it was Ti, but Gucci and Jeezy were are you know just the college days for me. It's
Right.
just gonna be a nostalgic moment.
That's close to home for you. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and we didn't think there was like problems with everybody. I believe Ti and Jeezy and Gucci all had turmoil a little bit. So, I'm just curious to see how that's gonna turn out. So, just for the entertainment factor
Yeah.
alone.
That's what they got to be in the same room for that one, right?
I believe that's how they've been doing
Yeah.
verses lately. Like
Yeah.
they haven't been doing the phone
Yeah.
for months, like
Yeah.
since the beginning of
Different.
quarantine.
Different energy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So what's one of your favorite verses so far?
My favorite verses, so because there's been a lot of them now at this point. Um, I really, really, really like was taken over the moon with Jill Scott and Erica Badu.
Yeah.
Like,
Incredible.
like absolutely. And Jill was playing like B sides.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
said, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna play
Yeah.
y'all's favorites. So
Rolling
I really love.
Hills. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
she was digging deep in the catalog, and I'm a big, big fan of Jill, so I was loving it. Um, I really liked all of them. I really liked Primo and RZA. I was very invested. Like I was on Twitter and talking shit. I was very invested with that. Um, and which one? There was one recently.
The most recent one wasn't Brandy and Monica, Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle. Who
That
was
one, oh,
that one? Okay.
that was
Yeah.
so wholesome.
That was
I
good.
love that one.
On a Sunday. That was
That
dope.
was so wholesome. Yeah. And honestly, I liked the Fred Hammond and John P. Key
Oh, yeah.
verses. I like when I can really go back and dig into catalogs, like the Teddy Riley one was great because it's like, it's taking me back to when I was younger for those. So I really like the ones that took me back to the 90s and like
Right.
early 90s.
Right.
Um, so I wasn't really, like the Two Chains one and stuff like that. Like I wasn't really running to the computer to watch those or my phone to watch those because it's my era, but it's more the younger generation.
Yeah.
It feels better for verses when you're getting reminded of records when you're like,
Hmm.
yo, I was like 6 when this came out. So
Right.
I can't wait for this Tribe one, Tribe and Outcast.
Now,
Oh
is that
man.
confirmed yet? Or you just? I know there have been grumblings, but
I thought I saw it on like a big publication. Like
okay. I
I
know they've
thought,
been in talks.
They've been in talks. Yeah. The reports are there, but it hasn't been finalized yet though.
okay,
But I'm
that's
hoping so.
that's gonna be. I mean, Tribe won. So regardless of regardless of what happens, Tribe won to me.
Yeah.
There would be no Outcasts without Tribe, in
Mm.
my opinion. But that's Fife Dog. Like that connection is very deep for me. So
Personal.
I'm
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely rooting for Tribe on. That. I hope that happens.
Yeah.
We need another throw like deep hip hop one like we had with Primo and RZA.
Word.
Yeah.
Need
Yeah.
another one of those. Yeah.
We do this thing called Finding the GOAT, the greatest of all time competition. We've done it for
Okay.
MCs, we've done it for producers, and we did it for groups. And we had Tribe and Outkast face off in that in the semifinals. And Outkast took it, just by a hair. And then they faced Wu Tang Clan, and Wu took the whole thing. But man, that's gonna be a great battle.
I hope that happens.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
So,
hope
Yeah.
that
so you
happens.
talk about catalogs. You've added a great one to yours recently.
Thank
New
you.
album called Closer Than They Appear. Um, the album just sounds phenomenal, just great, just sonically, really soulful, very cohesive. I
Thank
know
you.
that Phonte helped to executive produce it. So how did that happen? How did you guys connect? And how did he help shape the sound of the album?
Well, he originally, this was like his idea, his brainchild when we connected in November. We connected last November. And Fonte's been one of those people who's been on my vision board for years. I want to say about a decade to work with. Um, big fan and have been since about high school, since Little Brother came out. And then even more so when Fonte branched off and did his solo career and Foreign Exchange, like birthed me for
Mm,
like for real. So I've always been a fan from afar, and then we've been connected, online and through mutual friends. So when Little Brother came out with their project last year, and then they went on tour, me and Rod Digga went to the show, and went backstage, and I saw Pooh and Sean Don and everybody, and then I saw Phonte, and this was the first time I've seen him in person in like 10, 11 years.
mm,
But immediately was like, yo, like a huge hug. Like, son, I've been meaning to hit you. He said this to me. Like,
Wow.
we got to talk. I'm like, me? Like, I've been like, what? Like, he's like, yo, we got some work to do. We got to work. And the conversation that night went forever, like till the sun came up.
mm,
Just talking about music, talking about my journey, his journey, a lot of positive, affirmations and uplifting dialogue from him. And he just at one point was like, hey, I guess I'm doing your album.
mm.
I'm executive
Wow.
produce your album.
That's crazy.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing. Whatever you
Yeah.
want to do, you can play triangle on that bitch. You can do whatever. Like, you can do oohs and ahs, whatever. So I was just enthralled with the idea of something I've dreamed of doing for a long time. And that, kind of spiraled into the idea of the project Closer Than They Appear.
So
Because
what was it
Fonte,
that caught his attention? Like what did he say what it was that like made him say, you know what, I gotta work with her?
yeah, that's a good question. He said he's been watching and following me for some time, but specifically it was he said, "Oh, the Sway, my recent freestyle on Sway, which was last summer." He was like, "Yo, I came across that clip, and I was just like, she can rap, like, like, yo, she different rap." And then, he already knew that I could sing and play drums. I had that music background, so, he had mentioned, he's like, yo, I see myself in her. Like, I really would like to work with her. So, and that was just an honor to even, I didn't really think he was paying attention like
Yeah.
that. Like people like stuff and retweet. It's social media. You don't really know. So I didn't know he was like paying attention, and he
Mm,
was. He was
Yeah.
listening to the music. He checked out the gas. That's another thing. He liked the Gas Money project as well.
Okay.
So yeah, that was dope. You never know what you post and,
Yeah.
and what will catch somebody's eye. So
So you mentioned so you were a fan of Little Brother, but it was foreign exchange. It was really a sweet spot. What was it about them and that sound that caught you?
the versatility,
Mm.
the
mm,
versatility.
Singing and rapping like like yourself, the musicality.
Yeah, it's the singing, but it's the canvas behind the singing. You know what I mean? It's the type of sonic production, and the range of what Fonte would do, and then really what caught my eye and ear is his curating ability,
Mm.
of finding people that I kind of knew that was bubbling on the underground or being talked about, and then I would look on the foreign exchange track listing, and it would be like mutual friends, and I'd be like, how you know about Gwen Bunn, or like,
Yeah.
just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it just was dope because it was no, he wasn't like trying to chase all these big features or whatever. It was like, let me find the people that would be great for the project and great
mhm,
for my song or great for this idea. And that's how I am with my projects or even my shows when I put my shows together. So I just felt that synergy, like real taste making, real curating with the foreign exchange albums, and the influence of jazz and house and hip hop, but soul. It There was no bots.
Mm.
You never know what track would sound like what when you would press play, and that's the goals that I was trying to chase too with my albums as well. You never know what lyric gonna do. Is she gonna sing? Is she gonna rap? Is it gonna be more of a funk vibe or straight boom bap? And so the foreign exchange template, I would say, really inspired me because not a lot of people would do that or be intimidated to do that.
I could hear that. Just the texture, the warm texture of this album. Like Nick's Groove, one of my favorite joints ever, and Connected. And I hear that same
Yeah.
kind of soulfulness in your project. So yeah, yeah. Amazing.
And it's dope too. I mean, Phonte went on record and said that he's never really put his all into another artist project like this. I remember when Little Brother popped in the early mid 2000s, everybody out of the Justice League was coming with projects, and all three of those guys were helping them. But to now have all of these years removed, to have that kind of platform and dedication is really dope, and it shows in the work of this album. Salute to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So the title is in reference to mirrors. Every time we're in the car, you see that same kind of expression right beside you. What and it lends itself into the song titles too, with face to face and objects in the mirror. What were you reflecting on in coming into this project?
Well, Closer Than They Appear came at an interesting time, and just running into Fonte came at an interesting time because I was really starting to dive a little bit deeper into teaching. I teach hip hop at Musicians Institute here in LA. And, it was getting very redundant and stagnant for me career wise, trying to chase the same platforms or blogs or this is the same rigmarole. And it wasn't anything for me that was seeming exciting anymore at one point. So I was actually, entertaining the idea of, do I need to become a full on like educator? Is this my direction right now? Am I going to continually be going in this cycle when I put out music, kind of a tree falling in the forest a little bit? It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of people dropping stuff. It's getting much more saturated, and I really don't. I'm not for the gimmicks and the just playing the game really anymore as I used to with the networking and following up all the time and all of that. I just got to a point of being exhausted, and to be transparent, I still am. It's very exhausting still. Um, but running into Fonte and him kind of being enthusiastic and, you know, was really like taking a hold of my vision really of what I wanted my projects or my future to be. It kind of, put a battery in my back, and he was closer than he appeared to be. And I, was also a motif in a way of being closer than I thought I was to many things. And it's kind of a parallel metaphor going forward with the project in itself of just so many things that I'm not, realizing are going to be happening, or, just different situations where I'm like, wow, that's interesting. That's jolting me back into like a shock a little bit, if I were to use that analogy. Um, to just getting me back to, this is my purpose, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. If I have to pivot a little bit, it's just a reminder that putting music out and touching people, especially with how this album has impacted people with my words as well as the production, has been a dope reminder that I'm not done.
Mm.
Like I have a lot of things to say still that people care about in 2020 during a pandemic. They want to listen to what I have to say.
Yeah.
That's motivating, and just very reassuring at a time where I needed that. So yeah, that's kind of what Closer Than They Appear, how that has been a parallel through not only the project's verbiage, but also just like where I feel like I am in my life right now.
You paraphrase or quote Fonte on the album too with this. You do it on Want to Say, where he said that it takes 10 years to pop overnight.
Hmm.
You're well into a 10+ year journey.
Yeah,
Do you think that that adage holds especially true for this culture that we're all part of?
I hope so, because I don't got another 10 years to be playing around.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I hope so. I mean, I do miss the times of 10 years ago where, 2010, the festival scene was still like a coveted thing to do, and um, much more like publications and opportunities to get on certain platforms. People were really checking for music, and it was less noise. So
Mm.
it was just more of a like a selective, talented tenth, I would say, of artists, whether it be hip hop or anything, that were kind of rising to the top. Now it's like it just depends. It really does. It don't have nothing to do with talent. I can be as talented as whatever. It really just depends on how the stars align, and I have to just realize that because
Mm.
I've been working hard all this time. I ain't slowed down or none of that. So I hope it's been a decade. So I hope that that's true. 10 years pop overnight. Because people see you and they think, I'm seeing so many new fans that had no idea I existed. So
That's dope.
Yeah,
to them, they're like, yo, she's on the come up.
yeah,
She's
Hmm.
on the up and up. Yo, this new artist, Lyric Jones. And, I kind of smile because it's like, woo, I guess I can still be a new artist.
yeah. No, I've
Some
seen it.
people.
I've worked with a lot of artists over the years, and there's almost no one who's broken through in any kind of significant way before 7 years, and then it's
Okay.
usually definitely between that 7 to 10 year mark where people just start to get on the radar, right?
Right.
Like, I think it was like year 7 or 8 that Kendrick was like doing, Section 80,
Hmm.
and Rhapsody the same way, and like so many of these artists are so talented. So I actually had done a series called Grit
Okay.
because there's a lot of talented artists, all very smart, very driven, but you have to sustain that for so long, of like the rejection and all those things. So what is it that sustains you, that keeps you going in this?
Their responses from others. They always say, like, don't worry about what other people say. I can't relate. Like the positive reinforcement, honestly, from the people who do listen and press play is what I do this for. Like, if not, then why are we putting out records for people to listen to? If other people's opinion don't matter, then what? I could just leave it on my phone or leave it
Yeah,
on my laptop.
yeah,
So when I do press play, or when I do drop records and people press play and it's overwhelmingly positive, and then somebody like a Big Daddy Kane will repost me, or Pete Rock or whatever. Like, those are the things that go, all right, I gotta keep, like, I gotta get up out of bed now, like, because we need that, positive reinforcement and affirmations is my love language. So when I
Hmm.
know that I'm doing something right, and the people that I look up to, like, I really respect the opinions of legends and the forefathers of hip hop. So when I get those nods from Primo scratching me on the Gangstar album or whatever, it's like, all right, Cass is paying attention. I can't really just fall into a slumber. So when I get that, when people buy merch, when they check on me and really want to know what I'm doing music wise, that is what I do this for. Like, so that definitely is helpful and really motivating to continue on, because I think about all the hard work that I've done. It would be a shame to just like stop when people have been following me and supporting me for 10 years.
yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm letting people down. So I'm a push as long as I can
Keep
until,
going, keep going.
yeah,
Yeah,
as long as I can. It sucks because we're in a time now where quality doesn't matter. Like, there was a time where quality and quantity were kind of fighting each other. Now it just doesn't matter at all. Like, people are finding what they want, but as far as, like, there used to be gatekeepers on all levels, to where if you're good, you're successful. Now it has nothing to do with whether you're good or not. Nothing.
Mm.
It's numbers, period. That's very discouraging when you know you're talented and you don't have such and such numbers. It's like, what am I doing this for? So you have to rely on your fans and your support system, um, and focus on them. Put out music for just them,
yeah,
and hopefully people will catch on. So I have to be honest. I have to continuously remind me of that, because this shit will beat you up.
yeah.
Just everybody, all they care about is numbers and statistics. It's
Yeah, and part of
crazy.
that positive reinforcement is actually engaging with the fans on a personal level, right? And
Mhm.
also, and that's how you build fans too, is being in front of them, like as a real person, as opposed to like a picture or a video. And you've mentioned a couple times, like we're in the midst of a pandemic, so that's been taken away. This
Right.
song "Face to Face" really transports us back to the summer when lockdown and like COVID have been peaking and things have boiled over with the murder of George Floyd. And it just is so vivid in that song. but it feels so long, far away. You know, it's only been a couple
Right.
months,
Yeah.
but it almost feels like the energy is dying down. Have you felt that? Like, and if so, like, how do you think we sustain that movement that we've kind of built over the summer?
Yeah, I feel that a lot. I feel every everything's just a trending topic. Everything's just a moment for social media. And that was a very real moment for all of us as a world, not just the US, as a world. And it feels like it never happened. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like it was just a blog moment, or a tweet moment for people to, be outside. And it's crazy because that was me capturing that energy. Like you said, it was the summertime. Me capturing that energy was hard for me to do because I feel like as an artist, when you talk about certain things, it's got to be extremely intentional, and then just finding out a way to convey how you feel about serious topics but not come off preachy. You wanted to have a soulful, feel good type of, nostalgic feeling, I guess, for me. If the listener can't see themselves in the record, I feel like we're doing a disservice to our listeners as artists. They got to be able to put themselves in that situation. And I personally never really heard any women lately really being vulnerable about that time, and the literally the pulling and tugging of what to pick in a struggle, like what what issues are am I going to have to deal with today, whether it's COVID, whether it's being black, whether it's being a woman, whether it's being a woman in hip hop, whether it's living alone, whether it's dating, what it's just like it was nonstop for me. And I just needed to find a way to tell that from a woman's perspective, but the fellas can understand it too, like just feeling that. And to me, that was my overall goal. And I feel like today everything's just moving so fast, and we're moving on to the next thing to hashtag. And I don't really know how to digest that. I don't know. It was real for me, and all I could do is express it in my music.
In that same, in face to face, you also mentioned, and you a moment ago you spoke about finding the hope, finding the good, and in that song you say, lately I've been, kind of seeing, what is it? Not reflections of God,
Reminders of God. Yeah.
reminders of God. Can you speak to that? I mean, just in a year that has been marred by so much challenge and all of that's going on, like what have been your affirmations in the world of 2020? Beyond your career of just like, yo, like what's holding you down like that?
Man, Jake, to be honest with you, like to wake up every day, to see the sun every day, like
Mm.
to get up in 2020 when we're in a pandemic, a deadly pandemic, a financial turmoil, and I'm able to go into the kitchen and cook something, or I'm able to walk to the store, or I was able to just sit and just celebrate and really just honor God for those small things that I was overlooking, that we often overlook. I was able to breathe. I was okay. I'm over here whining about how I feel emotionally, which is important. But it's like, yo, I'm okay. I'm good. I got my parents are good. My family's good. I can call up my friends and like, I'm good. I got a little bit of a nest egg money wise where I can handle things. And I was creating a little bit more as far as just playing with DJing and the TC Helicon for Tiny Desk. And I had to just remind myself I'm good. God is reminding me like I'm okay,
Mm.
like things are in disarray right now in the world, but as long as I continue to try to get my mental and emotional state better, I'm on the right track. So that was that line too. Like, that's why I said
Yeah.
survival. Many ain't beating the odds. Like it's like I don't really I felt like I didn't even have the right to complain or feel away.
Mm.
People were going through so much worse. And that's a paralyzing feeling when you want to express, you know, where you're at mentally and you feel like you don't have the room to because everybody's going through something worse. So
That's very powerful, and I'm glad you mentioned the DJing, and I think it's dope. The turntables are behind you. Early, one of the first times I heard you was some of the work you did with J Live like a decade ago, and
Oh,
J Live is the triple threat, you know?
yeah.
And so here you are, you know, MC, singer, DJ, produce, all of these things. Just talk to me about the motivation to not conquer, but to be a disciple of all of the elements of hip hop.
First of all, I love the fact that you mentioned J Live because not many people know that he was a huge inspiration to me wanting to kind of like be a juggler of things. Um, just the sidebar when I saw J Live when I was younger, rapping and DJing at the same time, it was just like, word, like who's doing that? Like I just, and that's how I feel when I play drums, like just wanting to just showcase, my ability to do multiple things. So I much love and respect to J Live because he definitely planted a lot of seeds in me to want to diversify my repertoire of what things I can do. But I'm very hip hop. I'm all music, but I'm very hip hop. So embodying the different elements, I think didn't really come into my mind state until later on in my career, like recently. I wasn't really drawn to wanting to DJ really until I moved to LA. The DJ culture in LA is so strong and so like loved and respected that I kind of it just fell into my lap, just wanting to learn it and be a little bit more of a curator of music. And it's powerful to be able to control people's vibe like that. It's the same as being a musician playing music or being able to rap and move a crowd. So I see why the DJ is really the reason why rappers have even even cared about. The DJ just wasn't getting a lot of respect at one point. They were just becoming obsolete as far as how integral they were into shows and just the MC period. So I just got back into my hip hop bag and really wanted to just it came natural to me just to be able to blend and stuff. So when I see I'm falling into that, interest, I just kind of fan the flame and see how much I'll stick with a certain skill set.
Mm. You mentioned Rod Digger earlier, and I know you all have a special connection too. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that relationship?
Yeah. Me and Digga are very, very close. She's like a big sister to me and definitely is a great balance of like a good friend and I can just goof off and be silly and even just whine to a fault, but also just kind of like a mentor and will get me together when I need to be and definitely giving me gems and jewels throughout my career, and opportunities. She tells people about me and everything, and that's very rare in this game. People are so temporary and just come and go. Um, but Diggins has been over here. She's crashed at the crib. Like we've been on tour a couple times. Like that's a relationship that won't weather away. And I'm just very blessed to have somebody that really cares about me and won't steer me wrong, but also I can be myself. Like the flaws and all, that's so important to just be able to be yourself even when you tripping, just to have somebody just be like, all right, Lyric, I'll let you act a mess, but later on we gonna talk. Other people just judge you or talk about you, don't let you be human when you in this industry and you're an artist. So to have her kind of be that balancing of the scales to so many extents is definitely a blessing. So I love Digga, and hopefully we gonna get some new music from her soon. I'm still pushing her, drop some records.
Yeah.
But yeah, that love Digga, and she's helped me in so many ways. Definitely talked to her all throughout this quarantine too. So definitely a good friend to have in your corner. So love you, Digga.
So Digger, J Live, Phonte.
Hmm.
Who are some other MCs who've inspired you along the way?
Inspired me along the way. MCs, a lot, a lot of people. Radar. I have to since we went all the way back to J Live. I want to shout out Radar Ellis. He kind of got me in. Can't say kinda. He got me in the game. He was the first one to put a microphone in front of me and stick me in a closet and get me to rap at age 15. So I'm very inspired because I see him still putting out music or still at least writing. So I can foresee myself like when I have kids or get married, like he's still in love with music. Probably not the same way when I was younger, but he's still creating and producing and he's teaching now and he's a DJ. So I followed in his footsteps literally. From DJing to teaching to to being an MC. So Radar has definitely inspired me a lot. So much love to my big brother. Nas, Black Thought, um, Black Thought for sure because of his band element and the way he performs and his breath control and just all the essence of being an MC on a live perspective is really like sharp and skilled and people don't really care about skill and practice and breath control as much as they used to. So I really Black Thought needs more. We got to give him more flowers for that.
Mhm.
For as long as he's been in the game, like he has birthed a lot of us. And Nas, from the storytelling perspective, um, is a real reason why I'm so transparent as well. Pharaoh Monch too, just so transparent, but putting the bars in there so you can get the medicine with the candy, so to speak. I really like that style. Being able to be very skilled but still telling a story is very much Nas and Pharaoh. So I would say those three guys, aside from the other people you mentioned, for sure.
Okay, that's a pretty heavy crew right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the challenges facing women this summer and Reason. Reason from TDE.
Yes.
He just dropped an album. He's got a song on it called Fall. Did you hear
Oh,
that song?
no, I haven't.
Okay, he talks a lot about the challenges facing women in hip hop. Pressures to be hypersexual, pressures to like sleep with people, like all these things that like women in hip hop have to face uniquely that men don't. So, what do you think about like that? You're not alone in recognizing those things. The guys are kind of looking at too. But what do you think about that?
What do I think about? Like, what was his perspective on it? Was
His
he just
perspective is that the song is called "Fall" and it's "Don't You Fall." He's encouraging women to stay strong and not succumb to that. And
mm,
I know that there are a lot of women rappers, especially these days, who have taken that stand. Who don't compromise. There's Rhapsody, No Name, Shay Noir, yourself. But can you talk about the challenges that you face as a woman in hip hop?
um definitely have, people will try you. I'll say that. People will try you. And it be the ones, I haven't heard Reason's record. But it'll be the ones who kind of come off as, the peace queen fellas and come off with respect. And their intentions are very, very, opposite. Like they'll reel you in with the syntax and the verbiage of wanting to respect you or work with you. So I've been bamboozled a few times because, going back to my big bro Radar, I was kind of spoiled coming up. Like I was actually treated with respect and actually treated like a little sister, and not, sexualized or any of that. So the older I was getting, and people were kind of coming at me with the initial energy like Radar or J Live or whoever, and then they'll flip the script. I'll be like, wait a minute, I thought we was going I thought we was going to make rap records, like
Right.
what's going on? And then your emotions get confused because we're still women, so music is still very powerful. Sometimes there's a mutual attraction there, and other times I feel like guys have there's been no intentions to go any other way from a women's perspective, but the guys will try you and then they'll just see how far they can go. I don't necessarily think that's a problem, but I don't think people really are reading body language and just energy the right way in my experiences. I've done things that I wanted to do and other things that I just was like, man, I didn't really want to, involve with so and so that way. Um, I just felt not necessarily pressured, but I was pressured, like, and that's been the parallel with the Me Too movement too, like that fine line of really seeing what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. You know, people will say things to you and just, you know, comment on your looks or whatever. And when you're a heterosexual woman, you want to be complimented, you know, but a lot of guys know. They know when it's a respectful way and when there's um a mutual like admiration sexually or whatever, you know. So I think there's three hip hops. I think with women there's, you know, there's us who are super lyrical and we stay in what have you bubble, and then there's a mainstream side too where they've seen things that I can't even imagine. You know, there's levels of things that I probably don't even you know, I probably don't even know what's going on. So I don't think things have been totally bad, but it be the ones that come at you with the intended respect that make you feel like shit later. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, you embrace your sexuality on the album too. You know, your song with Vic Mensa.
Yes.
You know, y'all have a lot of fun on that record. Vic is another personal favorite of mine too. You know, I've worked with him a lot over the course of his career, so it was great. But how did you guys connect, and can you talk about working with him?
Yeah, well, that was all Phonte. The
Okay.
the true executive producer moment right there. We started working on "Show You How" when I was in Raleigh. Um, that was one of the last songs we got a little chance to get started on before I came back, and then back to LA, and then COVID shut everything down. Um, but I remember us distinctly talking about like, you know, a lot of women, you know, when they're not doing the overly sexualized style of hip hop, which is the mainstream. Let's just be honest. That is what mainstream women hip hop is right now. All sexual, all whether it's stripping, you know, or whatever. And I'm okay with people having a certain perspective, but I also miss the days when wordplay was a thing, where being subtle and being, you know, clever with talking about making love or relationships or just straight up having sex was, you know, cleverly talked about and played with your words and pen. So I remember Fonte going like, "Yo, we need a song on the project that's just playful and really shows like, you know, you all woman, like, you know, you have these thoughts too." I was like, "I agree," you know, like I just got to find a way to do it where it's not jarring, but I agree. And a house bounce type record was just so perfect to do with that. It was just so playful and, you know, it just brings you back to the 90s where you're singing along. And if you're listening long enough, you know what I'm talking about. But just at face value, it's a good bop that you can rap along to. You know, I don't think I cussed one time in my verse
Oh
at
wow.
all. So I miss those days. So at first, Fonte was going to rap at Vic Mensa's part on the record. And then he was like, you know, I think that probably isn't the best idea considering I'm executive producing your
Mm-hmm.
project.
Mm-hmm.
It probably would be dope. Let's try to think of another, maybe like young dude, because you're trying to teach a young dude something. So somebody that's more in your peer group. And so we ran through a couple names, and I said, I like Vic Bensa.
Mm-hmm.
You know Vic? He's like, yeah, I know Vic. Like, yeah, I like him. He's like, yeah, I like the idea of him on the project. Let me see what I can do. And then next thing I know, I got the record with his verse on there, and it was perfect. It was just exactly what, you know, I thought it would sound like. You know, like Vic has been somebody similar to me where he can be on a K Tronada record and then do some boom bap and then do primo and, you know, so I wanted somebody that was like-minded and versatile with their pen, and can kind of style on any type of canvas. And he was perfect. He was just straight to the point, and I'm playing wordplay
Yeah.
and everything. So it was a perfect balance
Yeah.
for that. And credits to Fonte, he made that happen for sure. And thank you, Vic, for hopping on there too.
Yeah. So Tay didn't rap on that record, but you had both him and Pooh on Cruising, and
Yes.
none of y'all were cruising. Y'all were going in on that record. So did you feel like added pressure, like, you know, with two lyrical legends like that to step up? Because you more than held your own.
Yeah, I didn't really, you know, no, I didn't feel any pressure. I've been doing this a long time.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
I'm not a new rapper. Like,
Yeah.
so no, I actually felt super comfortable because now I'm rapping with motherfuckers I want to rap with,
Yeah.
not saying that I wasn't before, I definitely have done some great collaborations with some incredible MCs, but from the track to the scheme of how we started every verse, like that's the type of shit that's my kind of raps,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like just a theme, and I love schemes. Like I really love schemes. So when Phonte sent me the record, I first of all I felt like a guest. First of all, I'm lyric and I'm a guest on a Little Brother record. To me, in my brain. So I think that's where the energy came from my pen because I'm looking at like I'm a guest here, so let me support my brothers. Versus this is my record on my album and they're supporting me. I guess that's the emotion I had to do
Mm.
mentally
Yeah.
to get my pen to where it was. But it was super. I felt super comfortable. Them niggas was styling on there, so it it,
Yeah.
it left me.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable when there's just like emptiness and it's just talking about fluff. Then I think I would have felt a little bit more pressure because I've gotten records like that where it's like, yo, I need a 16, and the song ain't really about shit. It's just rap.
Yeah.
You know, I like direction a little bit. It really helps me play around with ideas and double entendres and stuff when I have a direction to an extent. So I really like that, and I'm big on schemes. So Fonte sending me that like, all right, Pooh on 75, I'm on 85. So what highway are you on?
Mm.
So yes, let's
Yeah.
fucking write. Let's
Yeah.
fucking write this shit. So yes, and the
Yeah.
the drums on that shit, Focus killed. Focus and Mel Beats. Shouts out to them who produced that record, and he mixed the fuck out of that record.
Mm.
Like it feels so good in the car. Like
Oh yeah. I was listening in
definitely
the car
cruising.
yesterday. The whole album feels good in the car.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I know you said mainstream hip hop is the sexualized stuff, but Rhapsody just took home Lyricist of the Year. From the BET Hip Hop Awards. I think there's more diversity than ever, and you are contributing a huge part of that. So, congratulations. We just added Rocco onto our playlist.
Oh,
Gonna
dope.
have it
Thank
in
you.
heavy rotation.
That shows the educator in you
Yeah,
big time. That
yeah,
joint. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, and again, mainstream meat, a lot of people are noticing a shift a little bit, but it's still not on a mainstream level.
yeah,
You know, like getting one of us who's very lyrical being mentioned on lyricist of the year on BET. No shots on BET, but it's still not. That's not enough. There's way too many of us out here
yeah,
bussing for there to really just be a representation of just one.
yeah,
And I love that the door is being and shouts out to Rhapsody because she's definitely making her rounds on like Busta's album and more on a mainstream level to an extent, but it shouldn't just be one.
right,
Like
yeah,
it's like a million of this mainstream sexualized style from a woman's perspective, but what we're getting, me, Che Noir, Rock, what we're getting is like, yo, we need to hear you on the radio too, or we need
yeah,
to see you on these ciphers or whatever too. I don't understand why I can't. There has to be one person when we see these covers on Double XL or whatever. It's just always this one. It's always a representation of one, as if a lot of us can't really play in the same sandbox per se.
yeah,
When the guys can, the fellas, it'd be like 60 people.
yeah, yeah,
So it feels good to see lyricism represented through like Chica and stuff like that. Um, but it definitely needs to be on a more mainstream level with sales and record sales and stuff too, and platforms, Grammys and Billboard Awards and all of that too.
Hmm.
That's what I mean by mainstream. Like
yeah,
not just because you know Ambrosia for Heads knows me,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's like we pulling for teeth just to get other bigger platforms to see that it's more than just one person. So
yeah. Well, we're gonna keep grinding for you, and
thank you.
congrats again on the album, Closer Than They Appear, on every DSP out there. definitely great listen. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. And
All
yeah,
right.
let me know if you need me for anything else.
All right.
We
Awesome.
Go.
got you. Yeah,
All
Awesome. All right. Later.
right, take care.
thank you. Peace.
Yeah, so that was great, man.
Absolutely.
Big fan, big fan. I did meet her at A3C. She and Digga did a collabo together, and I think I recorded it and posted too. It was awesome. But like,
I
just
think I
really
remember
just
that.
a
Yeah.
phenomenally talented artist. I didn't even realize that she played drums too. That she got done with drums too. But just like a quadruple threat. So amazing.
Yeah, one thing I love about these Zoom interviews, I mean, it's wild because it's on the fly and sometimes there's technical difficulties. Thankfully, we didn't have any this time, but you really get to see artists you admire in their element and to see, Lyric with the turntables and the mic right there and all of that was just dope.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, there's a couple things, a couple other things I want to talk about. One is West Side Gun is in the news. So he officially is off Shady Records. I guess they signed what, like it's almost been like 3 years now, but
More than, yeah.
we didn't start to see product though until a year or so ago. So it feels
Yeah.
pretty short lived. But what's your thought on that?
You've made a point to me just kind of in the kitchen, the professional kitchen, and you're like, labels don't matter. You've been saying that to me in recent years, because I'm somebody that gets very hung up on the old school of like James Brown on Polydor, like, and I think this is a case where labels don't matter. I think that West Side Gun's success, and this is equally true of Conway and Benny, has been very much achieved on their own. There are people in the background, peers, executives, things like that, that I'm sure have pulled strings on the machine. But this is one more case where um, yeah, I don't know that an association with Shady, other than just name brand recognition, did much for West Side Gun. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, me neither. It was a great look. I think it definitely put them on the mainstream map. Just to go back to kind of some of the stuff that Lyric was saying. In showcasing them, and that's a huge cosign for like an
Yeah,
Eminem to recognize Griselda, who was largely underground and very like hard scrabble and very different than Eminem's rap at that point. I
yeah,
think it exposed them to a completely different audience and took them to a different level. But those guys have always been about building their own movement, and I think that you know they are all kind of their own bosses, and so to have their own label makes sense. Benny with Black Soprano Family and Gunn doing his thing. So it was surprising. There was some. It sounded like there was a little they didn't part on the most amicable of terms either, because I know that Gunn thought that they weren't promoting his projects in the way that they should have. But I think a lot of times these kind of moves are blessings in disguise. So yeah, I don't see it slowing down that movement.
yeah. No, and it's a dope part of history. I mean, the first time I had certainly heard Benny and heard his name, but the first time I remember seeing his face was in that Shady Cipher, where you got Gunn kind of making an introduction, Conway, Benny, and then Boogie, which was a great moment for Shady. And one thing I will say is a testament to M and Shady, because we're coming up on a year since we got What Would Sheen Gun Do. Shady didn't change these guys. Even in Conway's song with M, the Bang remix, M stepped into their world, not the other way around. And I feel like Shady and a lot of other high profile labels 10 years ago weren't so deft at that. So these stories are interwoven. I mean, and hopefully it's a situation where, like, I try not to read the tea leaves too much. Conway tweeted something that was very cryptic this week about, kind of disassociating. And some people were like, oh, does that mean Griselda? I suspect that it probably means Shady. But I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years down the line or 2 years down the line, we see these guys still in good terms with each other. And that's the magic too of M. I mean, M and 50, as far as I know, have no longer a business relationship, but those guys continue to support each other. M still supports Alchemist. There's just a host of that. And I hope that this isn't the end, but yeah, I think Griselda can do more on their own than any label can do for them at this point.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, one of the best freestyles I've seen in a while dropped this week too. Reason had a Funk Master Flex freestyle, and he killed it. I thought that was super dope. Did you get a chance to check that out?
Absolutely did. Outside the barber shop, he had some slick punchlines of Joe Budden, Living with Sin,
Yeah,
James Harden punchline.
yeah,
Reason is so dope. And, you mentioned him in our conversation with Lyric Jones. Reason is one of those artists. JID is one of those artists that, yes, they're out there. They have great streaming numbers. But in terms of really having a hip hop head to hip hop head conversation, you need those moments. And Flex being a beacon of East Coast hip hop culture, New York tri-state hip hop culture, that was a dope get. And the fact they did it outside the barbershop, yeah, it's funny. Flex
yeah,
putting his mask on after the interview was kind of funny too, but that just made me laugh.
yeah, yeah. I guess because he was spitting.
Yeah.
Dad joke. So, one of the biggest releases this week was Two Chains. He came out with his album "So Help Me God." Um, I like the album a lot. Rapper Go to the League. Um, his last album was one of my favorites that year. I got to listen to this one a few more times to see if it kind of stands up to that. It did not on first listen, but
Hmm.
also I will say that the second half of the album stood out to me like as being particularly strong.
Yeah.
And it's a nice build. So I got to go back and listen to it with fresh ears, without expectation, because I think I went in with kind of sonically envisioning him being on that same wavelength as Robert Go to the League, and this one is different.
Hmm.
So I want to go back to it, but I thought the second half was really really strong. What did
Yeah,
you think
you
from the album?
you texted me that, and so there was a period of time on Friday night where I just played the second half of the album, and I agree with you. I think it's really interesting, and this also might be a product of not being as plugged in as I was in early 2019, just because of where the site is, where you and I are professionally. But all of the hype around Rapper Go to the League, with LeBron A&Ring, all of that stuff, this one kind of just like popped up on me, and I thought it was really, really good. And Two Chains, he is one of the most lyrical, mainstream artists of that kind. Like, he reminds me a lot of Cameron, where there's people that dismiss a lot of Two Chain's peers and a lot of his collaborators, but still embrace him as a lyricist because of wordplay. Cam was like that, 15 years ago, and maybe still so. And yeah, I just every time a Two Chainz drops a project, I just appreciate his lyricism. And this one's very easy to listen to, very good in the car. I don't know that it enters my top 10 right now of the year. There's just some other projects that really stick to my ribs more. But I'm kind of TBD on that one. And that was the same issue too with Rapper Go to the League. Like, it was, you know, um, the joint with Ninth Wonder was one of my favorite songs last year.
Mm.
But by the time all these other albums came, it got a little bit lost in the sauce. I'm very interested to see where this one ends up when we kind of look back at 2020, in the
Yeah,
rap space.
yep, yep. No, I agree with you. I'm not sure that it would pop out for me, but I went back and listened to Reasons Project again too, with fresh ears. And I really liked it the first time, but like I really like it now, like listening to it
Okay.
a second time, um, so I will go back to this in a couple weeks. I like to do that. Like, I think
Yeah.
sometimes you got to like let it process and marinate for a couple weeks before you go back to it. But I will, so some of the joints that stuck out to me were Southside Ho,
Big time.
which is, his semi ode to Jay Z. He was on Breakfast Club talking about how he's asked Ho to like give him a verse 3 times now, and hasn't done it, so he's about to give up on that dream. But he sent it to Ho, like, hoping that he might, get on it. And it's got the chorus from "Feeling It," sung by Seven Streeter, and it's very subtle, but there I think are strong kind of hints toward the track of Dead Presidents, and just kind of
Hmm.
like broken down, and
Wholeheartedly agree.
yeah. So great song. Then YRB with Rick Ross is just that is a monster.
Man, you love
Absolute
Ross on
monster.
everything though.
Come on, man. Like,
And
I mean,
I say
nothing
that with
against.
respect. No, and that is good. That one didn't stick to me, but when you put me on a feel away though, which is funny because
Right.
in my mind, you know, I'm not chomping at the bit right now for Kanye
Yeah.
verses.
Yeah.
And that one, the chemistry there, I actually had to look and see if Ye, produced the beat, but it's his man Mike Dean, hip hop legend. But that one's special, and that, not to jump ahead, but that one, Ye's verse, as we talk about Jay references, it reminded me a lot of Jay on the Diamonds Are Forever remix,
Mm.
because Kanye comes in and says he's in the studio with Dame and with Biggs, and then he makes a line, and the next step, like, people gonna feel a certain way about it.
Right. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting when you add it
And he starts
to,
talking about slaves. Like he's going in. He's going
yeah,
in with people. Yeah.
yeah, but I like that joint, and it's great to see, Brent Fayez on a high profile, hip hop song too.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So 2 Chains. Any other thing? Anything else stick out for you
Yo,
this
I
week?
I didn't realize it till this morning, but it's always worth noting, especially since we've talked about Outkast in the podcast, is, Andre 3000 very quietly spit a guest verse. And we've seen Three Stacks, pop up with Frank Ocean. We've seen him with James Blake. This was home team. So Goody Mob released an album on Friday called Survival Kit.
Hmm.
Um, all, if not largely, produced by Organized Noise. It's kind of coming through ON's label in the Dungeon family. And Three Stacks appears on a joint called No Cigar. And, he plays cleanup on it. His verse comes right at the end. It's always worth noting, when Andre drops a verse. So I don't love the beat, to be honest with you. And I hold Organized Noise and Rico and Sleepy Brown and Ray Murray in the highest. But it's cool to see Andre keep it home team like that. So that was big for
Man,
me.
that dude just sneaks out 2 or 3 verses a year and just destroys it like every
Mm-hmm.
time. It's just it's amazing, man, and that's why it was so strange, so jarring to read that article a couple years ago where he was saying he didn't, think that he was still like capable as a rapper, and that's why he
Yeah,
won't put out an album. It's like, dude, you're killing the game. Like, I mean, just like please, like let us be the judge, not you. But
man. All
yeah,
I wanted to do was run into him, and when he was here in Philly for like 6 months shooting that movie or show, I still haven't seen it with Sally Field, but he was on many corners just playing the clarinet, vibing, and I always wanted to just give him my respect, because he's definitely one of my favorites. Another joint, there's just one or two others I think that are worth mentioning. So Your Old Droog is ramping up with a new project, and he got one of his biggest collaborations, I would say, to date. He's got Black Thought, LP, and then his two guys who have, been making a lot of noise over the last 3-4 years. The God Fahim, who came out of originally like around West Side Gun like 6-7 years ago, and then Mac Hami, who, we very cryptically see, photographed with Jay-Z, photographed, in Dre's studio, all these different places. And they came together on a joint. I hope my Russian's up on game, but Pravda, which is just, that's a powerhouse right there of, five great MCs. So, for folks that love that sort of like hardcore hip hop, definitely check that joint out.
mm.
And then,
there used to be a speakeasy in New York called Pravda, back in like early O's. I think
hmm,
it was early O's or like 90, and it was the spot. Like I remember seeing Mel Gibson there once, and like it was like the illest spot
really,
ever. Yeah, so I wonder if it's an ode to that, but maybe.
that's interesting. You don't see a lot of LP guest features. I mean, Black Thought has been very much making his rounds, but outside of Run the Jewels, L is just not. He's not dropping off a lot of guest verses, and I thought he killed the RTJ4 album. So great to see him there. And the other one worth noting, just because so many of our listeners and readers are huge Wu Tang heads, Ghostface Killer pops up on Vivian Green's new single. So she put out a whole album this week, but she's got a joint called Light Up, and you would especially like it, I think, because it makes a lot of reference to 80s pop and R&B, and the beat twitches a little bit with it, like they cut in and out of some things. And Ghost, which we've seen a lot of artists do right now, kind of with the playlist thing, like he riffs on the records playing a lot of, like, Bobby Brown and stuff like that. Rob Bass, DJ Easy Rock. It's just a cool collaboration. And Ghost is so hardcore, so conventional to his image, but you know, when he makes these R&B collabos or sometimes pop collabos, they're really good. And he still is who he is. He doesn't deviate, but he adds that essence to a song. And that's, you know, we've seen it with Tiana Taylor and some other folks. This is just a cool spot for it.
Dope. I'm gonna check those and probably add a few of those to the playlist. So yeah, it's dope, man. It's dope. You know, Billy Dance dropped an album too.
On
Method
a
Man,
Sunday, yeah.
Premier, Daz, Havoc, and Cormega.
Cormega, yeah.
You know, I'm told the new DJ K Slay is pretty good too. So yeah, a lot of new music coming out, man. The backloaded, a lot of people backloading this year. So
Yeah, 'tis the season, and I think now that the election's out of the way, we're gonna see some stuff. So yeah, man, it's been a busy week.
yeah. So what's your
So
song of
what's
the week?
oh man, I was
I
asking you the
beat you
same
to it.
question. So I sent it to you at one point as a song of the day. I was a huge Wale fan. Even I think I actually broke the story when he signed with Mark Ronson
Mm,
in like 2009, something in there, 2008. So I was a very big fan of like Nike Boots era Wale. And I love his album Ambition. But I've been a little bit cool on Wale in recent years. And then I came up on my daily mix. He's got a joint that came out this summer called Moving Different with McClenny, and it's like a hip house. Yo, that song has been in the heaviest of rotations for me all week. So best Wale record I've heard in at least 3 years, I would say. I can't stop playing it. But what about you?
crazy. You know, that was my favorite Wale era too, like the Mark Ronson days. I actually saw him, went to see him perform at Highline Ballroom,
Mm,
and it's like 2009, 2010. Met Wale, met Mark Ronson outside. That was really cool because you know it's Mark Ronson at his like peak with like Amy Ronson or Amy Winehouse and everything.
yeah.
And he played with a full go-go band, so it
Yeah.
was just it was like on fire up in there. It was amazing. For me, this song's been stuck in my head all week. I tried to send it to you, but dude, it's not on DSPs. The original album version is not even on YouTube. I have it on in my iTunes because I bought the CD back when it came out. But Prince did the original soundtrack for Girl Six, Spike Lee movie. Movie was not that good, but there was a song called Count the Days. It was acoustic guitar, and like really like it's soulful and bluesy. But Prince has got some really jarring, like vengeful lyrics about like just taking revenge on somebody. But it's an amazing song that's been in my head all week. So
You
yeah,
you you taking revenge on somebody?
Easter egg on that one.
Yeah, you sent me a live performance of that with Prince's face cover. That was pretty dope. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So word. Well, yo, always a pleasure. Um,
Man, yeah.
yeah. I hope the hazy shade of winter uh, doesn't get us all down. You know.
Yeah, or sick, man. But Lord willing, we get to do this again next week.
Yeah, I love what Lyric said. You know, just like being able to get up and go to the kitchen and cook some food for yourself. Like these are the blessings that we have, man. So
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
it.
Big wins that feel like small wins, but
Word.
amen.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right,
Take
man.
care.
Bye.
Peace.